Okay, today, this is June, Lord, what day is it? 24th, June 24th, 2020. And I dreamed all last night about my growing up years, and I guess this is one of those, let me tell you about the old days. And this week I've been missing Mom and Dad a lot, and just thinking about a lot of things, missing aunts and uncles going on, and Aunt Juanita. And anyway, I just want to talk about a few of those growing up days that this generation does not have. And when I grew up, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have computers, we didn't have tablets, we didn't even have landline phones in our houses. We had no technology whatsoever. None. We didn't have a radio. We didn't have a record player, which you guys don't even know what that is, probably. We didn't have a CD player. We didn't have a cassette player. We didn't have any of those things, not even a TV. We didn't get a TV till, I don't know, I think I must have been around eight years old. And then it was a little bitty old 14-inch TV that only got black and white. It was only black and white, and got 3 channels, 3, 8, and 41. And when the president spoke, he was on every single channel, and the TV shut off at a certain time at night. I want to say 2 in the morning, but that's a long time ago. And it would just give a beeping sound and have colored lines, and then turn to static. Friday nights was our kid night, where we stayed up all night and watched scary movies. Feature Creature, what was the other one? Twilight Zone. Those aren't even movies anymore, but I mean, you could probably get them somewhere. But anyway, our growing up years, this is how our growing up years were. Adults would sit around and talk, laugh, cut up, tell jokes, while the kids played outside. Or if we came in, we would empty their ashtrays if they smoke, or fill their coffee cups. But basically, we just played outside all the time. And we had fun playing outside. At Aunt Juanita's, Aunt Juanita and Uncle Carol had asparagus fields and grape vineyards. And we would run all through that stuff, run all through the grape vineyards, run through the asparagus fields. They had a little pine tree, little forest up top of the asparagus field, and we would play in that, and that was kind of neat because the whole ground was full of pine needles. And they had this big, huge rock bed. It was like a rock garden, actually, because Uncle Carol used to pick up all the rocks where he planted the asparagus, and yes, we had to help do that. And put them in a pile, in this rock pile. So we played on that rock pile, and just fun stuff. We played tag football, we played tag, we played freeze tag, we played kickball, just fun stuff. We played in their barn, and that was at Uncle Carol and Aunt Juanita's. At our house, I'm trying to think back, the youngest I was. It was before I went to school, so I had to be before 5 years old. I remember, actually my youngest memory, I was 2, and I asked Mom about it when she was still alive, because I remembered it in my early 30s, and I remember sitting on this bed, and I remember there was curtains in a window, and I remember holding a baby, and I asked Mom about that, and Mom said when Joe and Anita were born, she brought them home, twins, and I was around 2, and because we're 2 years apart, and both babies woke up in the middle of the night, and she couldn't do them both, and I walked in there, so she said she set me on the bed, I miss Mom. Okay, this is going to be some crying times and happy times. But, she said she set me on the bed and propped up Anita in my arms and gave me a bottle to feed Anita. And that's my youngest memory ever. Which is really weird because I don't have much memories of my young times, but that's my youngest memory. And of course I don't remember all the details. I was only 2, but I do remember that specific thing of sitting on that bed and holding a baby and the windows and the curtain. And so I asked Mom about it because I went to counseling in my early 30s for dealing with a few things. You know, everybody's life story has sad times. Everybody's family goes through something traumatic or something sad. I'm not going to touch those things. I'm not even going to talk about those things. This is talking about things that I want my kids to remember. I don't want them to remember anything bad. And, you know, forgiveness goes a long way, and we have to forgive because we won't live a happy life if we don't forgive. And anyway, that was my youngest memory. And then my next memory that I remember, and of course I was young, so I don't remember the timeline, but I do remember Jerry being drafted. I mean, I don't remember that, but I remember sitting in a lot somewhere in the car, and my head was on the back of the seat, and I was sitting on a bunch of kids' laps. Of course, we had 11 kids, so probably most of them were in there. Probably all of them were in there. But I remember Mom and Dad outside of the car with Jerry, and there was a big, huge bus, and they were telling him bye. And I remember crying in the car because Jerry was leaving. And that's the only thing I can remember of that. I remember later we lived in a camp because we worked in harvest. Mom and Dad worked in harvest. We picked everything. I mean, we picked strawberries, we picked pickles, which was terrible because they had these sharp needles on them. We picked blueberries, apples, cherries. Of course, we picked asparagus and grapes for Uncle Carol. Dad, I've tied grapes. I've picked grapes. Dad, all of us did all of that. Cousins and kids, and Dad trimmed grapes. That was in the winter when it was colder, and of course we couldn't trim, but we did tie grapes. We tied up the vines so they would grow correctly to be picked, and we picked grapes. I even fancy packed grapes for Uncle Carol once, us cousins and his kids and us, and I picked asparagus with my brother, with my sister, in a different state or in a different area. I remember Elaine, I remember going with Elaine to pick peaches when Elaine was with Donnie. And I remember the first time I picked strawberries, and we had to fill up these little quarts, and I remember I filled up my quart and I took it up to the little harvest counter thing, and they gave me a dime. I thought I was rich. Of course I gave it to Mom and Dad, but I remember that. Those were my kid years. Anyway, living in that camp, I did not go to school, but I know that Phil on up went. I think Harold may have went, but I don't know. I just remember sleeping with Elaine, and I wet the bed. And I remember her getting up mad and telling Mom, because she had to go to school, and I had wet the bed on her. I'm sorry, Elaine. I do remember that. But in that camp, we played outside a lot, obviously, but I remember going to the back, and there were these tall trees. Of course, I was little then, And I remember Danny and them used to tell us there was huge monsters coming, and if we'd wait, we'd see their heads over the top of those trees. um, I remember one time I was playing outside at that camp, and I was just playing, and all of a sudden Dad comes out with the gun and he points it right at me. Of course, he wasn't pointing at me, but me being a kid thinking, what's going on? And he said, freeze. So I froze. I mean, back then, when your parents told you something, you did it. If they said drop to the ground, you dropped to the ground. You just did automatically what they told you to do, or you get your butt whooped. But anyway, so I just froze standing there, and Mom came out behind Dad, and Dad shot, I think, to my left side. And anyway, he had shot a groundhog, I think it was. There was a groundhog there, because we didn't have food back then. We didn't have food. We ate off the land. You know, we weren't rich. We didn't grow up rich. I didn't have any white privilege. You know, we grew up poor. Everything we had, we worked our butts for, and we didn't have much, but we were happy. But anyway, sorry for bringing that up, but anyway, Dad shot this groundhog, so Mom made groundhog and dumplings, and that's what we ate for supper. In the cabin, I remember it being a dirt floor, and Mom swept that dirt floor every day. I remember her doing that. I remember having bunk beds on the wall, wooden bunk beds on the wall. Well, of course, we would have had to have that and then a pallet against the wall. That's what I wet the bed on with Elaine. When I was sleeping with Elaine, I don't even know if she remembers that. And from there, I don't know where we moved, but I remember living in a yellow, I want to say it was a yellow house with a little turnaround driveway in the front. I don't think we lived there long because I don't have a whole lot of memories of there. And then I remember living in we call the brown house in town, and that was behind, used to be IGA, which is now a different grocery store in Lawton, Michigan. But we lived there in that brown house for a while. And like I said, there's a lot of bad memories in between all of these memories, but I am not focusing on the bad memories. You know, you have to come to a point in life where you let go of that past, of those bad memories, or you will not be able to live your life. And we lived in the brown house for a while and had a couple good Christmases there. And I remember playing with Tracy DeLabar because she lived in that neighborhood. She was a cheerleader, so she used to teach me all these cheers. Of course, as a kid and a girl, I wanted to be a cheerleader, but I never was. I was too shy to try out or anything. And of course, we weren't rich, so I couldn't buy the outfits and stuff. But Tracy DeLabar did the Mickey Mouse, MICKEYMOUSE Mickey Mouse song to a cheer. So that was fun in that neighborhood. We lived there for a while. That's where I first went to school, and Mom and them walked me down. It was a straight shot down. It was like over and straight shot down to the Lawton Elementary School. They showed me how to walk down there to school. I thought I was so big walking to school by myself. And of course the other kids were walking down there too to go, because the middle school and elementary, and actually at that time the high school was there too. We didn't have the brand new Lawton High School yet. Was all in the same area, so we all walked down together and went to school, all at Lawton School. And I loved Lawton Schools. Good memories there, good teachers. I used to know all of my teachers' names by heart, but as I get older, you forget about that stuff. But kindergarten, I had an elderly white lady, and then first grade, I had Miss Schuler, and she was a black lady, very nice, pretty black lady. Second grade was Miss Donor. I want to say Miss Donor. Third grade, I don't remember who I had in third grade. Fourth grade was Miss Brown. We called her, well, the kids called her Haggy Brown. I don't know why they called her that, but I was always so scared of her because of what all the kids said. And I used to have dreams about, bad dreams about her chasing me when I was in 4th grade. And anyway, during 4th grade, one of those times, one of those winters, we were up getting ready for school, and it was cold, cold outside. At that time, those years, I went to kindergarten from the Brown house. We moved to, I know we lived with Aunt Juanita and Uncle Carol for a while, in between there, and then we moved to the house on M40 we called the burned house because it burned down. That was my favorite house of my childhood. It wasn't fancy. We didn't have heat. Of course, nobody had air. You know, that's where we got our, I remember our first little black and white 14-inch TV there. And, oh, and there's 2 red cardinals. Oh my gosh. Those are my sign from Mom. But anyway, where was I at? Oh, that morning we got up to get ready for school from the house that burned. And it was cold, cold. And we had an electric heater, but for some reason it wouldn't work. So Dad went outside because we also had a stove in the house. And, oh, I missed a house. I'll go back to that one. We had a stove in the house that used fuel that he had to light. And it wouldn't light, so he went out to check the big, huge, there was a big, huge fuel tank in the back of that house on M40. And I don't know what he was thinking. It was snowy outside, it was cold, and he tried to unscrew the bottom underneath the tank and to see if there was fuel in there. And it got all over his hands, and he just started yelling because it was so cold outside, and it immediately froze his hands. And I remember I think ambulance came, but I can't remember. But anyway, they took him to the hospital, and we went on to school. And I was so worried about Dad because I was worried. You know how kids think, oh, he froze his hands, they're going to cut his hands off. And I was sitting in there in 4th grade, and Miss Brown, the teacher that I was so scared of for some reason because everybody called her Haggy Brown, but she came up, she noticed something was wrong, and she came up when the kids went out for recess, and she put her hand on my shoulder, and she asked me what was wrong, and I just busted out crying. And I told her they was going to cut my dad's hands off, that he froze his hands. And that was the first day I realized she was a nice teacher. And she just babied me. I don't even remember if I went home, but she hugged me, you know.